Welcome back, everyone, as we get into the second set of the day. It is going to be Nodus Vince here versus the Detroit Renegades. My name is Gormizer, and to help me break this one down for you and to bring it to you is going to be Nick Pretty Hair Keo as we come through. And this one's going to be one of those matchups that, again, what I was saying about Renegades yesterday before they got their second win was just their job this split isn't to make that minus now 39 some incredible number.
Yeah.
It's to mess with everybody in essentially the top 7.
Right. It's going to be very difficult for them. Again, these records don't reset at the midway point, so they're still in the biggest hole in the Premier League. And frankly, for me, it was a great upset, great set yesterday, but it's the exact same start as phase number 1, right? They still have a lot of games to play. They have to start somewhere, though. I think the only difference for me is that Kanga are different than they were in week 1 of phase 1. Now, they've had that whole phase playing together. That main excuse that I think was used is that they didn't have a lot of scrim time and practice together, things like that. And while that was valid back then, it's not valid of week 1 of phase 2. So this is a bigger win for the Renegades in total, but it's still a very large mountain to climb. Na'Vi are still an incredibly strong opponent that I don't think will have that off day very often. If you want to throw that one in there for Penta, that was their off day this year. It's unfortunate, but Renegades still have a very long way to go.
And if you're looking at it, like, I think your best case scenario if you're Renegades here is to try and take Na'Vi on a day that maybe they haven't been able to warm up as much or they haven't gotten so much. I mean, like, Lazy at one point came in and was chilling with me. Like, me and him were just chatting before this game. But you're also looking at, I mean, they went 7 lengthy games against Envy yesterday. I mean, a ton of 4-3s. Yeah. They've got pretty much everything they need. So Renegades as an individuals are going to have to perform at an exceptional level. And someone who did that yesterday, someone who like was fighting for the win even when it didn't seem like maybe they could do it, was Shadow, who just blew up in games 5 and 6.
Exactly. It's down the stretch. It's that back-to-back really, really strong performances. I want to say it was like 16-3 and then like a 16-4 or something like that performances back-to-back. Cassie and Leon yesterday were big for him. Played the only Bomb King pretty much that we saw yesterday as well. But he just looked like he just didn't want to lose, man. He looked like he was fighting so hard to keep his team alive, and he really carried a large portion of the victory on Frozen Guard for sure.
It's that moment when, and you could kind of tell, because when you get into these lengthy sets, especially considering how late they started their set as well, you have to look at endurance and you have to look at how tired some of these players are getting, right? Because they're so mentally focused on this for so long that it tires you out, it drains you. And so that's like that moment where it's like you could see his second win coming right back into him, where it's just like, I can keep going, I can keep fighting. Like, I am going to make sure we stay in this while my team like gets to the point where they hit that second win.
I'll never forget, I played a ranked game on Timbermill that literally lasted 30 minutes. I'm not even trolling. And I was done. I just closed Paladins after that. I was like, I don't want to play anymore. I'm good. I've had my fill. I couldn't imagine playing a 3-hour Premier League set. I mean, the amount of focus, the amount of adrenaline, that's all exhausting stuff to have to deal with, and you will see it affect players, especially in those Game 6s, Game 7s. People get tired, they get frustrated, they start to make mistakes, snap at each other. All that type of stuff comes especially on a day like yesterday when you have such a long one. But hopefully Na'Vi and the boys will be looking to put this one away very quickly. History would point to a 4-0 or a 4-1.
And, you know, talking about Shadow, I want to say being able to kind of reclaim that for his team and kind of keep things going for them when it looked like their backs were against the wall. Creatives does something very similar, actually, for his team. I remember there was a set against Envy last split where Na'Vi were saying, we were pretty much done at Game 5. Like, going into Game 5, we were ready to quit. We knew it was going to be a 4-1. We knew the game and the set was over.
Yeah.
And then Creatives had one of the most insane Bomb King performances, and they were just saying, like, he was just popping off. He was so excited, and that energy is infectious. Like, it just goes from one player into the next, and they're like, oh my God, like, we can do this. Like, we can keep winning. Like, we're not out yet.
Yeah.
And those kind of, like, momentum shifts counter that, I guess, that other side. Like, when your endurance is starting to wear thin, when you are starting to get incredibly tired, when your hair does happen to turn gray because you've been here for 10 hours in a day, it is very much just that ability to potentially re-energize your team with the snap of your fingers.
I've loved that. And the topic of, being energized, it's great to talk about Creatives for that because he's more of a soft-spoken guy anyway. So I've just personally enjoyed seeing him get more excited, I think, overall, and for the Renegades as well. They need someone to invigorate them. I think Hero stepped up and was trying to be that for them when they were winning big games. He's running down the line, fist bumping, making sure everybody's pumped up. And because that energy is very important in these super, super long games. And the Renegades need that leader, right? They just lost their coach. I think they've switched who's doing drafting a couple of times over the course of Phase 1 and into Phase 2. So a sense of identity and who's responsible, I think, for this Renegades team and their success and their mentality is very important to establish early in this Phase 2.
I think my favorite thing about Renegades is, while you have like NIP, Na'Vi, Envy, SSG right now, established teams, they know what they're doing when they come into it. Renegades have been using this year exactly the way you kind of expect, slowly but surely kind of growing together as a team, and not making a lot of drastic changes. Like a lot of the times, especially in the last couple of years, you'd see a team split one didn't work out, we're dropping all four, we're coming back in, like we're coming back in with a entirely new roster,
Elvin
and then it's like
it.
You're not getting anywhere. Like sometimes there is a problem. I mean, even the Knights kind of were mentioning that. Like if someone is isolated as a problem, it has to be dealt with one way or another. But not changing everybody is definitely big. And for them, like all five of them have slowly but surely been getting better together.
I think Na'Vi is a good roster to point at actually on that topic of they have been that third place team. They really, really not strong. I mean, you can't really call third place struggling for a long time, but they were not winning stuff. They were not qualifying out as top two because back in the day, that's how we qualified teams. Like going to Valencia, they weren't at Valencia. You had to be top two in EU and NA, and then top one in all the other regions from the PGS to get a spot at Valencia. Na'Vi weren't there just a couple of years ago, but they stuck it out together for the most part. Added Phoenix, small roster changes here, but for the most part, that core of that roster has stuck together for a very, very long time. It has paid dividends. And I hope, because I love that storyline, I hope it works out for the Renegades, but we're starting to go on, 2 years now of just not a lot of success for this roster.
And that's, I think, the biggest question marks. And you kind of have to look at where the Knights were, where it's like, okay, we did take players that were from like Splice and SK, and can we turn them around? That's going to be the big question. But hey, map bans are coming through. Frog Isle, Warder's Gate, Timbermill, and Ascension Peak going to be banned out there. Anything kind of standing out for you? Other like Frog Isle immediately kind of hits a red flag.
Frog Isle a little bit. We didn't see a ton of it yesterday. Did get to see just a little bit of it, and it looked pretty polarizing, to be honest with you. Warder's Gate, that's starting to kind of get up there. It's one of the relatively newer maps, Bazaar being the newest. Just before it, frankly, we kind of went rapid fire on Warder's Gate, Bazaar. That's two pretty quick back-to-back maps.
Yeah.
So Warder's Gate never got a ton of time out there in the wild before people kind of either decided, we're just going to ban this one, or we don't want to invest the time into learning this one. But good old Jag Falls will be the first one up.
And this is one of those maps, again, looking at maps that I've kind of classified as the standards, but when you look at Frog Isle, the ban that Na'Vi had, I feel like that's a shot at Invocal. And then I feel like this is another step in the same kind of vein where it's like, we're going to not let you play snipers because we know you're really good at them. And then we're going to take you to a map that really isn't known for long-range sights or long-range fights.
Yeah.
So we can try to control you and what you do, since Invocal, usually in the beginning of the set, especially if you look at yesterday, like he's the one that gets them through games 1 through 4. Shadow picks up the latter half. Like they know how to switch off.
I like that. It's a good way to put it. The real story behind Invocal is just the unmesswithable KD, man. No matter what happens, win or lose, this kid's got like a 3 KD, and he plays that DPS role. So performance is a factor. Cassie first picked on Jaguar Falls. Let's talk a little bit about this. It's definitely going to be highly contested, I think, between both of these teams. You know what I mean? Invocal can play it. Shadow can play it. Creatives and Mutu can play it. All 4 main locked DPS players can play it. This is big for Phoenix. I think, Cassie is really, we talk a lot about being that A+ pick. Just plug and play, baby. Even if you want to run that 3 DPS style, that's top of the list for Phoenix. Allegedly, who has 6 champions in his back pocket that he's waiting to pull out. But it looks like it might just be Cassie today.
I mean, yesterday they picked Cassie 6 of the games they played against Envy.
Oh my God,
the only reason they didn't pick her the 7th was I think Envy picked her. So it was just one of those. They won 4 out of those. So she's got a good track record for him. There's no real reason to shy away. And it does open up the draft in a way that, you know, again, it leaves them a
Look at
little
that.
ambiguous. Now they have Ashe and Furia. Like, it's aggressive without having to show all of your hand.
The binoculars, because I think Renegades kind of see what Na'Vi are doing. Yesterday, the story about Na'Vi was like they're branching out. They are running 3 DPS. We talked a lot about how they play the point. That's the heart and soul of this team. They play this double tank, and they're the best in the league at it. However, when you're the best at something, the only way to get better is to do something else great as well.
Yeah.
So they're adding this new style, becoming more versatile. But it looks like the Renegades saw it coming, taking away the Barrack Genos, who are a very, very core to a 3 DPS strategy.
And I think that's where we've kind of put Furia in the conversation. Maldamba actually lately, like at least between yesterday and today, hasn't been winning as many games as we used to see out of it. Damage amp right now seems to be kind of the hot commodity. And so Luminary has been prioritized, I think, by most of these teams. Furia fills a little bit of both, right? You only get the damage amp on Earl, but you get the burst healing that you would get out of a Maldamba. Like, you kind of have a little bit of one, little bit of the other, and you can try to make it work forward. So it can keep that triple DPS rolling a little bit.
For sure. And taking a peek at this Na'Vi draft now, and it's always kind of fun to watch, like, who's talking during the draft. And I was surprised, as soft-spoken as creative as Mutu might say even less. I don't even. It's a close race between Mutu,
signature
Spunky,
line is yes,
and creatives of who talks the least. Phoenix, we just kind of assume he spearheads a lot of the drafting just because he kind of talks the most. He's one of the more vocal players for Na'Vi. But upon further inspection, they do say that Mutu does a good bit of it, right? He talks a lot about it. I think Mutu just plays a ton of this game and is really kind of in tune with what he wants and what he thinks is going to work.
Based on that, I like to imagine that Phoenix is like giving long-winded discussions about it, and then you just hear Mutu go, Willow.
Like all this analysis, and then he's just like, no, Willow.
It's just 2 words, maybe not even, depending on how it goes. But it's looking like it's going to be Invocal on Maeve here for the Renegades, which has been a deadly combination, and Shadow on one of his signatures with Drogo. So how do you feel, I guess, about the drafts coming into this
I actually
now?
love it. I think, I know who's playing everything. I like that Navi's kind of sticking to the guns here and going with this 3 DPS style. While it's not traditional in the sense that it has the Genos, I really think Lazy did a phenomenal job yesterday of playing those off tanks, those more aggro tanks, but as the point tank and trying to be like old Theo, you know what I mean? Hold it down with not necessarily the most ideal front lines, trying to get aggressive when it's necessary. But this is all great stuff from Na'Vi, all good stuff from the Renegades. I really, really can't wait to see this first game.
Now we just have to see if he starts flexing like Theo. Either way, it's going to be looking good here for both of these teams. Let's go ahead and jump down to the casters as we get into the first game of the set.
Thank you, Normizer, for passing that off to us. I'm constantly trying to combine names, but Nick's at the desk.
I don't know if that one works.
Dave, you're here
I'm
now.
not buying it. I'm not buying into Normizer. Normizer, you're gonna have to sell me on a little bit more, I think. That's okay. That's okay. But maybe the weakest of the ones I've heard up. Also, I'm sad, and I'm making sure this is a few sets removed. When I said hooked on phonics, I was not just referring to you.
Right,
I was,
no,
I know.
Nick's,
Right,
yeah.
okay, good. I'm just making sure that was not lost.
Oh, okay. No, I thought you were talking about the grammar thing.
Oh, yeah, no, I was, but it wasn't just
that.
It was fun
that
and Nick.
is
It was
cool.
fun Nick.
Okay, I like
100%
that.
credit goes to Kresnik. I'm not going to be the kid who tells the joke, gets the laugh, and then claims all credit. That's all.
it.
That's all for Kresnik.
Appreciate that, Mr. Dolson. I appreciate